Okay, so we have the Bexley C4. We have three of us, and our fourth comrade will be doing her own, which I cannot wait to see because she is amazing and incredibly unique individual. So I know we will get something very, very creative from her. But we will just take a second to introduce ourselves. Emily, do you want to start?
Yes, my name is Emily Reeser. I am an elementary art teacher at Montrose, and I've been teaching about 15 years.
And Pam?
Yeah, my name is Pam Sexton, and I am currently a seventh grade science teacher at Bexley Middle School. And I've been teaching over 20 years in elementary to middle school and even community college. So I've had a variety of teaching experiences in my career.
And I'm Meredith Stone. I'm a reading intervention teacher at an elementary school, and I teach kindergarten through fourth grade students. I've been teaching, I don't know, let's go with 17 years because I've taught in many different capacities. And I'm really excited to be here and chatting with you two today. So let's just jump in with our first question. So question number one is, what drew you to this project and why were you interested in developing students' civic and creative capacities? Pam, do you want to start us out on this one?
I would love to. I worked with in the creativity, what was that called? The Creativity Institute with the Columbus Museum of Art, I don't know, 6 years ago now or 5 years ago. It was a summer institute, and I just really enjoyed all of the learning and the community with other teachers from around Ohio. I really got a lot out of that. So when I had the opportunity, when Emily, told me about this, and I had the opportunity to join this group, I just felt very honored to have the opportunity, and I knew that from my prior experience, I was super excited about, it just seemed like something really big, a 3-year research project, to be able to be with so many other passionate people who are, really thoughtful. And I knew that I would learn so much from the experience. So I was just, really enthusiastic and felt honored. And did I answer the question?
You did,
Okay,
yeah.
Okay, I won't go on and on.
Well, I'll tag on to that. This is Emily. Also, I have done the Creativity Institute at the Art Museum, and the work they have done with Harvard Project Zero is so exciting and has been very transformative for me as a teacher. So the opportunity to be able to partner with Harvard was, of course, very enticing. And the other thing that I think has been really successful about the C4 is that you are able to bring a team from your school. So you're not in isolation in this project. You're working with this team of educators from your district. And that has been so wonderful to kind of have these thinking partners to kind of grow along the way. So that was what really got me excited about this opportunity.
And this is Meredith. I also did the Summer Institute. It was something that was offered through our district. And I joined it the summer before we started C4. And it was a really cool opportunity to play again with adults. And I do mean play, and see a lot of people that are often very stressed or overworked, really release some of that into this artwork and into different imaginative challenges. And I just really felt like that was unique. And so when it was brought to my attention that this group was forming in Bexley by Emily, I was really excited. And then to hear who was on our team, I was very excited because we're all doing very different things and working with different age groups. And so I always find that when you start those vertical conversations, that's where the real growth happens for teachers, because we start to think more about where kids are going and what they need to be able to do. And it pulls you out of that pocket of your space. Mm-hmm. I do wonder if any of us want to, I think we all kind of addressed what drew us to the project. I'm curious if anybody has any more thoughts on why were you interested in developing student civic and creative capacities? And I'll maybe let you two think for a second in case you want to add anything. But I would say why I was interested in that is there's just a lot of social justice that is happening in our country, I think, at this point. And I think to find entry points into that and to elevate those moments and to create space for kids to discuss these hard conversations that are happening around them. The Black Lives Matter movement really lifted up during the time that we were doing this work. And I found that this was a really great way for us to connect to some of that really big thinking that can feel very abstract to kids. But that's also my teacher brain and adult brain putting that on them, because I don't know that it feels so abstract. I think it feels very, very real for them and very current. And so I think this, for me, was a great opportunity for us to let them express some of those difficult feelings or create space for conversations around those components. Either of you want to chime in on that component of it or part of it?
I do. I mean, I think that, any teacher would understand that we are social learners, and, the whole experience of going to like distance learning, it really drove home that point to me. And I think just that learning that's happening in the group is really powerful. And to be honest, I felt, the least confident in the area of developing the civic part of this project, because as an art teacher, I feel like creativity is really in my wheelhouse. And I felt, nervous about, can I really teach and build civic capacity? But it quickly occurred to me that that was something that I was already doing. And I think, the other thing that's been really powerful is that we created this social group and this civic space in this C4 space. And I think just being able to be a learner, a learner with these other teachers was really powerful for me, because you don't learn, sitting alone in your studio in this white space. You're influenced by all these things that are happening around you. So I think that was really kind of an eye-opening moment to realize, right, we are trying to raise and foster these good humans and build these relationships and these connections. And you're doing that. Every teacher is doing that in their classroom. So I think if anyone's feeling like, I don't teach social studies, so I don't fit in with this project, you probably get it as a teacher that they're having these conversations every day in your class and building that community and building those relationships.
I think that you both put it very, very well. I would agree with everything that both of you said. I'm trying to see if I could add anything. So to think about, why were you interested in developing civic and creative capacities? Yes, like you both said, I think that we really do that every day. But to maybe put a lens on it or a microscope on it and really delve into that further, as we've done in with this project, my interest was realizing that it would add like some layers and depth to my teaching. And I really loved that idea. And I think it has, and it will continue to do so into the future, what I've learned here. And I will continue to build on it. But just taking, an Ohio State standard, and it adds so much layer and depth. It's so meaningful. And so I think that is why I was interested in developing this and learning more about it.
Great. Thank you, ladies. Okay, so our next question is, when you think about civic in relation to the lives of your students, what kinds of things come to mind? Emily, do you want to lead us on this one?
Sure, I'm nodding because, as you're even reading that question, because I think, that has been something that has changed probably the most for me over the course of this project, that, kind of understanding how, your classroom is really a microcosm of society, and how I think sometimes we feel really powerless, I think, to affect change in the greater world when there are all these problems and there's all these crises around us. But I think it's pretty powerful to think that, your own classroom is a civic space where you can foster, nurture this culture. And I think that is powerful, very powerful. And I think even when things are going on around you in the greater world where you can't feel the effect of your change, you can impart that change in your own little world. And that has ripple effects out into time and space. And I think that is very hopeful feeling to me, and very empowering feeling to me. And I think, this is a time in education where we need things that feel empowering and feel hopeful, because there's a lot of forces that sort of make us feel like we're not having an impact. And I think, that that does feel very good to know, like, wow, there was one small moment today where we solved something and we repaired something. I mean, that's powerful, and it shouldn't be diminished.
And Pam, do you want to share?
Sure. It's really interesting because I feel like when I think about civic in the lives of my students, there's like almost two. I could divide it into two parts. One, just the day-to-day life of a traditional middle school, and I really do think of things like restroom breaks and tardies and homework, and these things do matter to them. And I think of that, but then in my subjects that I'm teaching currently, science, things like climate change and bigger world issues like lack of representation of minorities in the field of science, those are huge issues. So those are the things that come to mind.
And this is Meredith. I think truly when I think about civic and my particular field and my particular students that I work with, so I work with struggling readers. I think of the social justice issue of reading, which has really surfaced, I would say, in the last 2 years as not just an educational need, but as a social justice issue. And so I really feel like I need the students that I work with to understand that their value and their voice is so, so key and included in all things in this world. And so I try as much to provide opportunities that allow them to speak their mind and speak their own truth, because I do sometimes feel like some of the students in my space may have trouble with that, or may not move at the pace or rate of the other thinking in their typical classrooms. And so I'm really excited that the civic has been elevated in the space, and that we can talk more, and that the kids that maybe don't feel comfortable even in an entire like large classroom to share their ideas on, let's say, the Montgomery bus boycott, and they really are looking deeply at different components of that and sharing their thinking, and so I really, as far as importance to them, I would say they don't realize the importance of making sure that they are able to communicate those things. But I think that they have such important insight and vision from, their particular perspective of the world, that could be different from others. I don't know. And I will say what surfaces typically in my space when we're talking about these things most often is justice, most often is related to race, and difference. And I do think they are sort of fumbling their way through being able to articulate those spaces for themselves and understand for themselves. I will say too that there are sometimes, well, maybe I'll save that for a later conversation, but yeah, I think there's just been a lot during this time that has come up for them. And I think that there are things too that are still surfacing, new legislation that's coming out to kind of silence education in some ways. And I almost wonder how this work would fit within those frameworks of silence, because we allow conversation and we show items that kind of hook thinking or direct their thinking in ways that are unpredictable. Absolutely unpredictable. You can look at images and present them to them and expect one thing to happen and something completely else does. And in the frame of thinking of them being allowed to discover themselves and learn about difference and support difference in our culture, I just wonder how this is all going to keep manifesting when we are restricting speech or objects for conversation, because the things that also surface are always very surprising and things you don't realize they're thinking about sometimes. And so for us to then say, we can't talk about that particular thing because it might be attached to one of these new laws that says we can't talk about it, feels very timely. And, you know, I don't know, just kind of an interesting time, I think, that we have experienced this whole process.
Oh yeah, and I think, you know, Meredith, you're the thing that you're kind of not saying, but I think, you know, that I'm hearing is just, you know, when these conversations are coming up, or these ideas are bubbling up from the students, you're listening. And I think that in and of itself has been something that we've really kind of underscored the importance of, you know, in your classroom, slowing down and really listening to the students and letting that learning be a little bit more organic. And I think just that act in and of itself is very powerful, because you can encourage thinking, but if you're not listening, you know, I think it's quickly going to stop that feeling of trust and safety and risk taking in your classroom. And I think that's something that I've really learned. It's really worth it just to slow down and be present and kind of let things go a little more organically. And but you have to be a learner along with the students for that to happen. And that's hard to do in our current state of education, where we need to push through a lot of things. But I think to really create those spaces where you have that opportunity for that kind of learning, you really have to have listening happening.
Agreed.
And I would add to that, you know, the importance of listening in our small inquiry groups that we've, you know, had these past 3 years. I felt that so intensely, you know, how wonderful it has been to have other educators who I really admire, and I admire them for so many reasons. One, I feel I intimately know them because we've had these conversations like this for 3 years now. And so I know that they're deep thinkers. I know how much they care. I know how much they're trying to, you know, reach their students, to help their colleagues, to support them. I felt very listened to. We had many, you know, the group that I was a part of met mostly Saturday mornings. And so, you know, through the pandemic, it was really obviously challenging for everybody. And some of those group meetings would basically just start with us practically crying about things that were happening that were so difficult. And I felt so listened to and so heard. And that feeling is so important and empowering. And then it definitely reminds you how your students need this too, to both of your points. And so teachers also really need to be listened to. And so this is part of the project that because we talked before and we all agree this is a really valuable part of this project, to be listened to by wonderful teachers that really care and want to support you. And I can't tell you how many times I just felt so, I guess, broken maybe. And then I would say things that I would be told, like, you're okay, you're, you know, like, build me up, but not in a disingenuous way. Like, I really felt like they meant that. You know what I mean? They would be so complimentary and just point out, like, look at all of these good things you're doing. I even remember at our first meeting, I took a picture. I don't know if you all remember, but our first small meeting, we were at Kitty's, the coffee place. And I took a picture and I remember it. And me and Jason showed up, and whatever I said, I just felt so full after that. And, you know, when it can be, you feel so completing this job, you know, and sometimes, and I just felt so full, like, these people matter to me, and and they are really supporting me. And then it just makes you a better teacher. It makes you a better teacher. So of course, and I think doing that for students makes the students better as well. And I do try to think that, you know, really and truly, like, uplift them, support them, listen to them.
I know, Pam, you're making me laugh, because I feel like the mantra we keep hearing, you know, through this whole experience from admin and from, you know, the world is like self-care, you know, but that's, you know, what we need each other. That's so much more important than, like, yes, we can go get a massage, but it's really not helping all these things that are, you know, falling on us. So I think for me too, I mean, I completely agree that the camaraderie of this group has been, you know, such a lifeline. And, you know, when you've had to pivot so much through this, these learning models. I mean, in Bexley, we changed learning models 4 times in 1 year. We were distance, and then we were hybrid, and then we were in person, all in. And, you know, that was like, I have whiplash from just trying to keep up with that. But I got so many good ideas and so much support from the other teachers through that time. I mean, one of the best things that I did during C4 was I stole this project. I know I use the word stole loosely, but Jason Blair, who is just wonderful and so giving, he had this gift project that he did with his students. And I did that during our hybrid model because I didn't have all the kids at the same time. So one group designed a gift for the kids who were in a split in the other group. And it was so powerful and wonderful. And I just feel like I wouldn't have been able to come to that on my own if I weren't part of this project. And just having that collective thinking of this group was really, really useful because you are so isolated as a teacher, and you need that team, and you need those people to help you kind of think through things because it's a lot to process. So
I think that's so interesting what you just said, Emily, and I'm clicking into like the beginning about the self-care and how we're like in these meetings and they're like, now go take care of yourself. When actually, if the meeting hadn't have happened, or if, you know, within the meeting, conversations like this were allowed to happen, perhaps we wouldn't need so much self-care. Perhaps we wouldn't need the massage afterwards because we would have had that space wrapping back around to speak and be heard. Right. And so,
Yes,
so incredibly true. So incredibly true. Okay. So let's tie it up because I think that we're kind of landing here anyway. But our last question today is, what are your biggest insights about this work? And whoever wants to start.
I'll start. I just off the top of my head, it's probably impossible to just say one thing, or, you know, and the more we talk, more things bubble up and so many wonderful things. But I think our students really will rise to the occasion. One thing that comes to mind is and this is, you know, a collaborative thing, we talked about asking students, why do we go to school? And in my mind, I mean, so I did this with my classes, and the level of their insight and what they came up with and their conversations were really impressive to me. And then of course, it's another reminder, do not underestimate your students. Do not underestimate them. They can do this work. This is what makes all of this, all the time we put into it and collaborating with each other and getting these ideas really worth it. Because when we are able to think this way and to bring this to our classrooms, I feel like the students will gain so much. They will rise to the occasion. And we might think like, oh, this is a really complex, like, how could they ever do this? But I think that will surprise us every time in a good way. And then it will remind me, why should I shouldn't be surprised. You know, I don't underestimate these students. You know, they have some really profound things to say. And it's really amazing to be witness to it and to be there.
yeah, I agree. And I have to say, you're making me think, Pam, about this prompt that Jason did with his students that I loved, and I tried it, where the kids walked into the class and he had written on the board, you know, fourth graders are just kids and don't have anything important to say. And I love that, and I'm like, I'm doing that, and oh my gosh, it was just incredible. Like, they walked in and they were immediately engaged, like, okay, what is up with this teacher? And it was so fun and wonderful. And this is the time when we were having a lot of conversations about, you know, going all in, and you know, all these things that had kind of changed in our world, and how much we felt we had missed out on things, but would we go back and change it? It was their learning that was happening. So we were kind of in the middle of, you know, these discussions as a class. But that was really one of my best days as a teacher. And you could just feel the electricity in the room. The kids were mad, but they were ready to talk. Like, we do have things to say. And yes, they did not disappoint. And I think you have to be that person to listen and to hold them up. And I think that's one thing that this Harvard Project Zero has been so impactful on me, is using documentation to show the learning. Because I think when a student realizes that they're being listened to, that is very empowering and life-changing. It's life-changing for us when we're listened to, and it's life-changing for our students when they're listened to.
And so I would say that too. I was hoping that we would talk about the documentation piece, because I think not only being listened to, but the power of me just pulling up on my smartboard a Google Doc, and when they speak, capturing that brilliance, that brilliant moment. Because as we all speak, there are those, you know, those phrases or just, oh, aha moments where you're like, whoa, and you write it up on there, and their eyes go, you know, the eyebrows go up, and they're like, they're listening, but they're also like, they're capturing what I'm saying. And I would also tell them when we were doing these kinds of projects that I was working, you know, with a team of teachers and researchers from Project Zero. So if they understood, like, not only am I going to get to hear your brilliance, but these other people are too. And I think there was a lot of power in elevating their voice and putting their voice up in the front. The other, I think, big insight that I took was that this project was 3 years. And I would say for the first 2, I didn't understand how to make it connect fully to what I was doing. So it always felt sort of a sidelined activity every time I did it. Not that it wasn't valuable and not that it didn't feel powerful, but when I started to use art to create context, which within literacy, there's this giant shift, you know, to stop teaching main idea, since most things we read have 90 of them. And, you know, to stop teaching strategies that are being assessed on text or in tests, but to build this extreme content knowledge. And that when you just take a piece of art from a specific time period, and then you look at that before you go into your unit on whatever your theme is, that the context that is created, the time and space that develops for a student's mind, and they're thinking about, how long ago was this? How different were things? You know, wait, was this before? The questions when they start to try to place your art within the time frame of their mind and context of knowledge is incredible to watch. And so I think really having that this year come to surface, that like, holy cow, not only does this connect, but it creates this new depth to what I was even discussing with them, was the biggest, I would say, insight that came to me, that sometimes we don't see as teachers the connection. Sometimes we don't see that doing a creativity challenge is going to have this huge shift on what we're doing because we can't see the connection, and that can really take years and years to find. You know, it's kind of the patience, which these two know I have zero. So yeah, this has created patience and space in my brain, and it elevates the voice by creating that patience and space for them to speak, the students.
Yes, and I just want to circle back just as my final word, but just something, Meredith, you said at the beginning that you were interested in this because you could play with other adults, other educators. And I think, you know, the other thing that has been really wonderful is just this creating this time for us to kind of play. And our play is, you know, our play looks different, right? It's kind of creative play, trying things out, and also joy. You know, there needs to be joy in our work. And I think that that's really important to remember, that having joy with your students and fun and play, and this space for me has been that in so many ways. Just, you know, connecting with other people and friendship and humor, and yeah, that's important, and we need that. That's my last word. And thank you, because it's been such a joyous road with you.
Emily, I hope to agree. And I have to say that I feel like I've actually really enjoyed making this podcast, and I've enjoyed this time talking to you two. And I feel like it went really well, and I feel like you two make me seem a lot smarter. So thank you for that. Like, I like being a part of this group because I feel like, oh, this is great, but it's definitely the 3 voices together, right? And it mirrors everything that we've been saying: community, the civic, we've been creative with our thoughts and ideas, and we've had joy. I think this podcast kind of encapsulates the things that we've been talking about, and how I feel happy right now. So thank you.
And I love you both. I mean, truly. And what is kind of interesting too is that Emily and I work in the same building. I think we've maybe seen each other maybe 5 times this year. And it's so bizarre, but like within our building and within our normal daily context, I would say that we have probably we've seen each other in a parking lot once. We've seen each other on Zoom and staff meetings, but because of just even our space within our own building, we don't typically even see each other. And then Pam, she used to be at our building and now is no longer. So this was really wonderfully special to spend this time with her over the last 3 years, and to get to know her on a deeper level and friendship level. And I consider all of the people in this group just so inspiring. And so many times we have walked into things and we've really not wanted to come, only because it's at the end of a day or it's on our weekend. And I swear we almost always have this wrap up moment where we're like, I feel so much better at the end of it. And that we're happy.
Yes, agreed.
True.
Yeah. So we're all
Yes.
happy we came.
Yes.
Happy we came. And a thank you to you, Meredith, for being our fearless leader this morning and guiding our conversation. Well done.
No problem. I'm going to
Thank
stop
you,
the
C4.
recording. Thank you,
Okay.
C4.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.